I left, the rain was pouring down the night. It was supposed to be the happiest birthday of my life. After 5 years of struggling together, after countless nights working overtime just to build a future for us, I had finally saved enough money to prepare a surprise she would never forget. Forced. I reserved the restaurant where we shared our first date, bought the necklace she once admired in a jewelry store window, and even wrote a heartfelt letter telling her that I was ready to propose. I thought that night would become the beginning of our forever. Instead, it became the night I discovered that the woman I loved had already chosen someone else when I arrived at the restaurant, holding the gift box tightly in my hand. I saw her sitting across from another man. She wasn't confused. She wasn't forced. By Hal's smiling. She was same smile that used to belong only to me. But what hurt the most wasn't seeing her with another man. All was hearing her laugh as she said the words that shattered my entire you. This. You're a good person, but you're not the kind of man who can give me the life I want. Thrust every thighs. 4. Looked at me like I was nothing more than a chapter she wanted to erase. The man sitting beside her was someone I recognized. A wealthy heir from one of the city's most powerful families. A man who wore the show clothes, drove luxury cars, and lived in a world I could never enter. And suddenly, everything made sense. The late nights she spent working, the sudden changes in her fide, in her attitude, the way she started comparing me to other people. She wasn't falling out of love. Hansa, she was upgrading. My fingers tightened around the birthday gift until the box was crushed. For years, I had believed loyalty mattered more than money. An omen town Sal. I believed two people could build an empire from nothing if they stood together. But that night, I learned a painful truth. Some people don't want to build an empire with you. They only want to stand beside you after you've already built one. I walked away without saying a single word. No anger, begging, no tears. Because the moment I saw her choose another man, something inside me finally died. I packed my belongings, returned the apartment keys, and removed every trace of myself from her life. She expected me to come back. She expected me to apologize. But she expected me to fight for one thing. I wasn't leaving because I stopped loving her. I finally learned to love myself. For the first time in 5 years, I had no relationship holding me back. No one telling me my dreams were unrealistic. Persanted Touth. No one making me feel like I wasn't enough. So I started over. I took the small amount of savings I had left and focused on rebuilding my life. I lost everything else and seemed impossible. I'd be by my side forever, and I was forced to face a world where nobody cared about my struggles. But something strange happened. Awesome Sapti. The more I stopped chasing approval from others, the more opportunities appeared. The skills I had ignored suddenly became valuable. The ideas people once laughed at started attracting attention. The same determination that helped me survive years of hardship, that pushed me forward. And while I was slowly climbing back up, my ex began realizing that leaving me might have been the biggest mistake of her life. Because the man she abandoned wasn't gone. He was transforming. But she wasn't the only person watching my rise. One evening, during a business meeting at the city's most prestigious hotel, I met someone who would completely change my destiny. Her name was Evelyn Carter, the richest woman in the city. A woman whose name appeared on every major financial headline. A billionaire known for her intelligence, beauty, and ruthless business decisions. People said she could destroy companies with a single decision. They said she never trusted anyone. My Hamlin and Hast. Eldest beside her, but when she looked at me across that meeting room, her expression wasn't cold. It was curious. Harassed her, she said. I smiled slightly. Is that supposed to be a compliment? The legendary business queen laughed. Maybe. I thought the conversation would end there. I was wrong. Because the next day, Evelyn Carter appeared in front of me again, and this time she had a surprising offer. A date. S- The woman and lost in South. The woman, an ordinary man who had lost everything and said something I never expected to hear. I want to know the person behind your success. I couldn't believe it, for Sound Taos. But what I didn't know was that Evelyn wasn't interested in the man I was becoming. She was interested in the man I had always been, the man my ex never appreciated, the man who stayed loyal when nobody was watching, the man who kept fighting even after being abandoned. Evelyn invitation. A familiar figure appeared again. My ex had discovered who I had become, and she wasn't ready to let go. Transgression Territ was now standing in front of me, looking at my new life, my new life, my new confidence, and the powerful woman beside me. Her expression was filled with regret, but regret came too late. Hanlas. She wasn't looking at the man she left behind. She was looking at the man she no longer had the right to reach. And the biggest surprise was still waiting. Odd, tend, and lost. Wasn't just interested in dating me. She had a plan that would expose the truth behind my ex's betrayal and reveal a secret that could change everything. A secret that would prove my painful breakup wasn't the end of my story. I'm lost. It was the beginning of my rise. The day after Evelyn Carter invited me out, I thought I had misunderstood everything. A woman like her didn't simply walk into someone's life and ask for a chance to know them. A world where private jets replaced taxis, where million-dollar decisions were made over breakfast and science, and where a single sentence from her could change the future of an entire company. And yet she had looked at me and asked for a date. My snan. Maybe she wanted to understand the person who had somehow survived against impossible odds. Maybe she was just interested in a strange story. My life wasn't impressive. I wasn't born wealthy. I didn't inherit a company. Power Samorts and house. I didn't have powerful connections. Everything I achieved came from years of being ignored, underestimated, and pushed aside. But Evelyn saw something that others never noticed. She saw the hunger, the determination, the refusal to give up. Billionaires. When I arrived at the restaurant Evelyn chose, I expected something extravagant, a place reserved for billionaires. Where she sat Esrafraft. Instead, she chose a quiet rooftop restaurant overlooking the entire city. The lights below reflected in her eyes as she sat across from me. "It seems surprised," she said. "I thought someone like you would choose a place where the entire world could see you." Evelyn smiled. For the sound for it. She looked entire world, toward the city, towards the city. "What I want is somewhere nobody is watching." Caught Ansenloth. That answer caught me off guard. Something. The richest woman in the city was probably the loneliest person in it. Everyone in town. Because of her money, her influence, her power, our casa. But almost no budges when the cameras disappeared. The conversation that night wasn't like any conversation I had experienced before. She didn't ask about my achievements. She didn't care about my SAS status. She asked about my dreams. I lost Stananway. My fears. And when I told her about my breakup, I expected sympathy. Instead, she gave me something more valuable. Understanding. "You know what your biggest mistake was?" I looked at her. "Trusting the wrong person?" By home loth. She leaned forward, pined as a Sonworth case. "Your mistake was believing someone else's opinion determined your value." Her words hit harder than I expected, because deep down, that was exactly what happened, whether successful or not. I let someone else's love become proof of my worth. And when that love disappeared, I thought I lost everything. But Evelyn saw the truth. I only lost someone who failed to recognize it. Hence, asked Evelyn Carter, the woman, something strange. Simple. When she wasn't acting as a business leader, she laughed at small things. Untachrin lot. She didn't care about expensive gifts. She cared about sincerity. Frusting to shirt to Morst. And maybe that was why I felt comfortable around her. Because with Evelyn, I didn't need to pretend. I didn't need to prove anything. For the first time in years, I felt like I could simply exist. But our peaceful evening didn't last forever. The next morning, trouble arrived. My company's biggest competitor suddenly launched a campaign attacking our reputation. Rumors spread everywhere. Investors became nervous. A lot. Partners started questioning their, and behind all of it was one familiar name. My ex's new boyfriend, the same wealthy as show for it. His family controlled one of the most powerful corporations in the city. South. They weren't just trying to compete. I always sentiment and see were trying to destroy me. When I discovered the truth, I wasn't surprised. A person who wins through betrayal will always fear someone who rises through effort. But this time, I was in my office, carrying a folder. I know who is behind this. Hone La Serter. You already investigated? She placed the folder on my desk. I don't investigate people. Her eyes became cold. I investigate people who threaten what belongs to me. Froze me. Because I realized something. Evelyn wasn't just protecting a business partner. Frasapat. She was protecting me. Inside the folder were documents revealing hidden manipulation, sapbas, and evidence that my ex's new boyfriend had been using his family's influence to eliminate competitors. The same man who believed money could buy everything had finally met someone who couldn't be bought. Alith and lost. Evelyn Carter. But there was another document inside, a document that changed everything. Alnland began. It contained information about my ex, and what I discovered shocked me. Because the betrayal on my birthday wasn't the beginning of a being we're off from cest. That had started months earlier. She hadn't simply fallen for another man. She had been preparing to abandon me long before that night. Every excuse. Salt. She made me feel like I wasn't enough. It had all been part of her decision to replace me. I stared at the evidence silently. I thought I would feel anger about Astamon. But strangely, I felt nothing. Frahan lost. Because never truly existed. I wasn't grieving the woman who betrayed me. I was grieving the illusion of who I thought she was. Relent carefully. Are you okay? I looked at her and nodded. For the first time, I meant it. Because I finally understood. The breakup that destroyed me wasn't a tragedy. It was a rescue. If she had stayed, I might have spent my entire life trying to prove myself to someone who never deserved me. I'll lost Sigtas. South, beside a woman who saw my potential before the world recognized it. A woman who didn't want my success. She wanted my journey. However, just when everything seemed to be moving forward, my ex appeared again. This time, she wasn't arrogant. She wasn't confident. She wasn't the woman who walked away from me. She was desperate. I'd my office. She stood in for hours just to see me. When I finally stepped outside, she looked at me with trembling eyes. I made a mistake. Those were the first words she said. The woman who once told me I couldn't give her the life she wanted was now looking at the life I built without her. Laws bring crave. I know I chose wrong. She looked toward the building behind me. The future. Emin and lost. Everything she another chance. For a moment, the old version of me wanted to believe her. The man who loved her to ask why. Why did she leave? Why did she betray me? Home south. After I became successful. But that man was gone. I looked at her and gave the only answer she deserved. And health and then laughed. Cheers. Her face froze. You're sorry that I survived without you. By Helm South. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument we had ever had. And behind me, Standing at the entrance of the building was Evelyn Carter, watching everything. I lost, but she wasn't angry. She was calm, because she already knew something my ex didn't. The past could knock on my door, but it could never enter my life again. For 5 years, I had imagined the day when my ex would finally realize what she had lost, her regretting her decisions. I imagined her standing in front of me, begging for another chance. But strangely, now that it actually happened, I felt no satisfaction, frustrust and hander. No joy, because revenge was no longer important to me. Bon elnin tarrant for me. Ew. Lost. It was reaching a point where her regret no longer mattered. My ex stared at me, waiting for an emotional reaction. Paleth, anger, hets. Maybe she expected me to remind her of everything she had done. Maybe she expected the old me to appear again, being and loved her. Too much. But that man disappeared on the night of my birthday. I spent years trying to become the man you wanted, I said quietly. Her eyes trembled. But when I finally became someone I could be proud of, I realized something. I looked directly at her. I homed it south. Those words hurt her more than any insult could. Because deep down, she knew the truth. And loss, and it leave, says I wasn't good enough. She left because she was too impatient to wait for my success. She wanted the finished product without experiencing the struggle, but some Mesa South to show for it. She wanted the reward without sharing the journey, and now that I had reached the top, she wanted to rewrite history. But some chapters could never be rewritten. By Hound and Trust to Mourn, she whispered. For a moment, the city noise disappeared. I remembered everything, and nights to show for it. Our first meeting, the promises we made, the nights we ate cheap food because we couldn't afford anything better, the moments. And maybe that was the hardest part. She wasn't always a bad person. Bisana and Pert in the South. She was someone who changed, and that was something I couldn't forgive. Because a person who leaves when you are struggling doesn't deserve to stand beside you when you succeed. I loved you too, I answered. Her expression softened. But that doesn't mean I have to return to the place where I was destroyed. The hope in her eyes slowly disappeared. Behind her, a luxury car stopped near the entrance. Her new boyfriend stepped out, the same man she chose over me. The same man she believed would give her everything, but his expression was completely different from before. Only frustration. No arrogance. The documents Evelyn discovered had already started causing damage. Several investors withdrew. My Han loss. Major partners ended contracts. The reputation his family protected for decades was beginning to fall apart. And now he finally understood something. Hein is the Shernan loss. But it couldn't erase evidence. When he saw Evelyn standing beside me, his face changed. Fight for it. You did this? His voice was filled with anger. Evelyn calmly looked at him. For San, no. You did this yourself. By Sancher, the entire atmosphere became tense. The man laughed bitterly. You think you can destroy me because you're richer? Evelyn didn't even blink. No. Her voice was cold. I can destroy you because you underestimated everyone around you. That sentence silenced him. Because that was his biggest weakness. Everyone had a price. He believed every person could be controlled. He believed power came from wealth alone, by Hallstein Pino. But he never understood the strength of people who had nothing to lose. I looked at him. The person who had once taken away the woman I loved. By last, I didn't hate him anymore. Because he was no longer my enemy. He was simply another person trapped by his own arrogance. The real battle was never against him. It was against the version of myself who believed I wasn't enough. That night, something changed. I stopped looking backward. I walked away from my past completely. And Evelyn noticed. Awesome, she said, as we stood outside the building. Sal. I shook my head. No. I looked at the city lights. Because if I need someone else to fail for me to feel successful, then I haven't really won for a moment. Then she smiled. A genuine smile. Han and Noah format. The smile of someone who was proud of me. That's exactly why I chose you. I looked at her. What do you mean? Evelyn turned toward me. Do you know how many people approach me every day? People who want my money, my influence, my connections. She paused. But you were the first person who had nothing to gain from me. I remembered our first meeting. The way I spoke to her, without knowing who she really was. The way I treated her like an ordinary person, not like a billionaire. Not like someone above me. Just Evelyn. I'm the gnat. And maybe that was what she valued from her. But I was the first person who simply wanted to understand her. I passed. The company continued growing. The attacks from my ex's boyfriend became meaningless. Mine lost. The same people who wanted partnerships. The same people who questioned my abilities now called me a genius. But I no longer cared about proving them wrong. I spent time wasting in recognition. Now I wanted something different. Peace. And lost. And surprisingly, unlike my previous relationship, being with her wasn't exhausting. I didn't have to constantly prove my worth. Bonds. I didn't have to fear being abandoned when things became difficult. Because Evelyn wasn't beside me because of what I had. She was besides because of who I was. But just as my new life was finally becoming stable, another secret surfaced. A secret hidden within my own company. Lost. And when Evelyn discovered the truth, even she looked shocked. The person who had secretly supported my ex's betrayal wasn't the man I thought. Her spouse and her new boyfriend, it wasn't his family. It was someone much closer. Her hometown and the timer. Someone who had been watching my journey from the beginning. Someone who knew my weaknesses. Someone who knew exactly how to destroy everything I built. When that person's identity was revealed, I realized the birthday betrayal was only the first move in a much larger game. Because the enemy I had been searching for, all along. The moment Evelyn revealed the hidden documents, I felt a strange sense of unease. For the first time since my life began changing, I realized something. Loss stood in front of you with a weapon in their hand. Some enemies smiled. Some enemies offered advice, being and lost. While secretly waiting for your downfall, Evelyn placed the documents on my desk and remained silent. That alone told me how serious this situation was. My sound loss. Sad. Sabson lost us. She had faced billion-dollar lawsuits, corporate wars, and countless opponents trying to bring her down. But this time, even she seemed disturbed. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Financial records, hound facial, hidden agreements. Then I saw the name, trying to freeze. And every someone I trusted seemed to freeze. Someone who had been with me before I had anything. A struggle I went through. My own business partner, Daniel, who helped me create my company. From nothing. The person who stood beside me when nobody believed in my ideas. The person I considered my closest friend. Hotsome South. Are you saying Daniel was involved? She nodded slowly. I home at house. My hands tightened around the documents. Because betrayal from strangers was easy to accept. I can so had loss. But betrayal from someone who knew your pain. Someone who knew exactly how hard you fought. That was different. That kind of betrayal cut deeper. Evelyn explained everything. I honed in the loss and Hetton in the loss. Tats. Daniel had secretly contacted my ex's new boyfriend. The purpose wasn't just to take my girlfriend. It was to destroy my confidence, to make me abandon my own company, to convince me that I wasn't capable of succeeding. At first, I couldn't understand why. Ilan's house. We had built everything together. We had shared the same dream. Then Evelyn me the final piece of evidence. A contract. A contract proving Daniel had been promised a position inside the rival corporation after my company collapsed. He wasn't helping them because he hated me. He was helping them because he wanted what I had. My success. I know him watch me lost. Less achievements. He didn't want to watch me rise. A bitter Lahamsin wanted to replace. Escaped my mouth. So this was all planned. Evelyn looked at me. The birthday dinner wasn't just about your relationship ending. She paused. Was meant to be the moment you broke. And suddenly, everything became clear. The cheating, the rumors, I'm boss now. The rumors, professionally. It wasn't random. It was a carefully designed attack. They wanted me emotionally destroyed before attacking me professionally. Bolton Saramat. They thought a broken man couldn't fight back. But they made one mistake. They underestimated what happens when someone loses everything. Hof, it did some south. They become impossible to control. I closed my eyes and remembered that night. At the restaurant. The necklace. The woman I loved choosing another man. Rustan in the south and south. But now, I understood. That pain had awakened something inside me. Alarm lost. The person they tried to destroy became the person they could no longer defeat. I'll handle this, I said. Evelyn looked surprised. You don't want me to help? I smiled. I appreciate everything you've done. I looked at the documents. But this is my battle. For years, I allowed other people to define my story. X decided I wasn't enough. Her new boyfriend decided I was beneath him. Daniel decided I was someone he could use. This time, I would decide my own ending. The next morning, I invited Daniel to my office. The same confident smile he always had, the same expression of friendship, the same fake concern. Hastlontvaz. Is something wrong? I stared at him. For a moment, I saw the old Daniel, the friend who stayed awake with me during difficult nights, the person who encouraged me when my dreams seemed impossible. And maybe that was the saddest part, because the person I trusted most was also the person who hurt me the deepest. I wanted to ask you something, I said. Daniel smiled. Of course. Did you ever believe in me? But I noticed. Lot. A person who need times to think. Daniel leaned back. What kind of question is that? Danielers. The room became silent. Then Daniel sighed. I lost and at him. You were too emotional. How? I'm much about people. About loyalty. About dreams. His smile faded. But business doesn't work that way. There it was. The excuse every trader used. They always convinced themselves they weren't cruel. They were simply being realistic. I helped you create this company, Daniel said. I deserved more. Slowly. So you decided to take it? His eyes became colder. I almost laughed. Earned? I lied and never reaching the burden. The person who never stayed awake, worrying about failure. The person who waited until success appeared before reaching for it, lost. That earning, I stood up. You're right about one thing. Daniel looked at me. Business isn't about loyalty. I walked toward the window. About choices. It's about choices. I turned around, and your choice was to betray the person who trusted you. Finally changed. Because he realized something. I wasn't the same person anymore. A someone was. The man sitting in front of him wasn't the desperate young entrepreneur he thought he could manipulate. I was someone who had survived betrayal from everyone I loved, and that made me far more dangerous than before. Daniel left the office angry. But he didn't know something. I had already prepared everything. Brusta soused. The legal actions, the counterattack. I was fighting to protect the future I built. However, there was one thing I didn't expect, and lost Sal's. That she looked more serious than ever. There is something else you need to know. What? She hesitated, all with words that shocked me. Your ex knew about Daniel's plan from the beginning. My heart stopped, and the loss wasn't just a victim. She was part of the betrayal. And the woman I thought abandoned me because of money, actually helped destroy my entire life. I couldn't move. For several seconds, I simply stood there, staring at Evelyn. The woman's I thought betrayed me because she wanted a richer life. The woman I believed was just another person who gave up when things became difficult and had. But now I was hearing something completely different. She wasn't just someone who left me. She was someone who helped destroy everything I built. I whispered. My voice barely came out. Are you sure? Evelyn didn't answer immediately. That silence was enough. Manhwa. Because if there was even a small chance this wasn't true, she would have denied it. She would have protected me from the truth. But Evelyn Carter had never lied to me. Con toused. Finally, she placed another folder on the table. This contains every conversation between her and Daniel. I opened it with shaking hands. Plans. Plans. About timing. Everything. My birthday dinner wasn't a coincidence. Asa soused. The breakup an emotional decision. It was a performance. A carefully prepared scene designed to break my confidence. Promise sound tat. Daniel had convinced my ex that I would never become successful. He told her that staying with me would waste her youth. He promised her a future filled with luxury, prospect, and she believed him. It wasn't even the betrayal. Passed for it. It was one sentence buried inside the messages. A sentence that destroyed the last bit of respect I had left. Once he loses his motivation, he'll give up. The company will be easy to take. I stared at those words. My hands became cold, frustrated, because they weren't just trying to leave me. They were trying to erase me. They saw my dreams as something they could steal. They saw my kindness as weakness. They saw my trust as an opportunity. For years, I blamed myself. Successful enough. I thought I wasn't wealthy enough. I thought if I had become better sooner, she wouldn't have left. But now, I finally understood. The problem was never that I wasn't enough. The problem was that I gave my heart to people who only valued what they could gain from it. Evelyn watched me carefully. I know this hurts. I closed the folder. Her sow. I shook my head. Anymore. Because strangely, the pain had already happened. The worst moment wasn't today. Pinat losing the South in the Southpass. When I still believed in Hath, she was the person I loved. When I still thought losing her meant losing my future, I knew the truth. But now, I hadn't lost someone valuable. I had escaped someone dangerous. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to expose them out of anger. Press a sound. I wanted revenge. I was going to do it because they had crossed a line. They attacked my company, unharshing. They manipulated, thrust my employees. They tried to steal years of my hard work. And this time, I would make sure they understood the consequences, the company and loss. The first move came for. He thought he still had control. He released a statement claiming he was the true founder behind the company's success, painted himself as the genius strategist Dallin Mott, as someone who only got lucky. For a moment, the internet exploded. People questioned everything. Some believed him. Some doubted me. But Daniel made another mistake. Hemperus and Nor. I had spent years building relationships. Not fake relationships based on money. The employees who worked beside me, the partners who saw my effort, the people who remembered in the difficult times. Within 24 hours, the truth started spreading. Former employees revealed how Daniel had manipulated internal information. How they were soused. Business partners released statements supporting me, and the evidence Evelyn collected began reaching the right places. Daniel's perfect image started collapsing, Hounds and Taden. But the biggest came from my ex. She appeared publicly and tried to explain herself. I made mistakes, she said during an interview. I was influenced by the wrong peoples. She tried to present herself, as someone who was manipulated, out of self-inuriv, who regretted her choices, someone who was also a victim. But people noticed something, Frustran Lafarai. She did to me. She only apologized after everyone discovered the truth. And that difference changed everything. Toms and lost. Da meant nothing. That evening, she came to see me again. But this time, she wasn't standing outside my office. Hendesan laws. The building that represented everything she thought I would never achieve. When she saw me walk out, tears filled her eyes. For Sani, I looked at her calmly. I don't. Hoth, ha. She froze because she expected hatred. Tone lost. She expected me to finally give her the emotional reaction she wanted. But I had already moved beyond that. I don't hate you because hate means you still have control over my feelings. Or say, I just don't care anymore. Those words hurt her more than anything else. He wasn't hoping she would understood. The man she abandoned wasn't waiting for her forgiveness. He wasn't hoping she would return. All in loss. He wasn't the same person who's begging her to explain. That person was gone. I really did love you, she said. I nodded. Then how can you let me go? Frustin homeward tanned. I looked at her. Doesn't mean allowing them to destroy you twice. She had no answer. I had lost. Not a poor man who might become successful. Not someone she could return to when things became difficult. On the Mukshinwai. Someone who loved her when he had nothing. But now, Hori. A few steps away, Evelyn was waiting. She didn't interrupt. And that was the difference. She simply stood there, and that was the difference. Lust, I could provide. Evelyn cared about the person I was before I had anything. When I walked toward Evelyn, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Ashan. Peace. But just as everything seemed to finally settle, a new problem appeared. The collapse of Daniel's plan revealed something much bigger. A hidden organization had been controlling several companies in the city. Daniel wasn't the mastermind. He was only a piece. Someone else had been watching me from the beginning. Someone who knew about my abilities. Someone who feared what I could become. Tentoth, a Ten Commission, was connected to Evelyn Carter herself, because the next name that appeared in the investigation shocked both of us, all with someone from my past. It was someone from hers. The name appearing on the investigation report made the entire room fall silent. I am lost. Ethla Klein Carter looked genuinely shocked. Not the calculated surprise of a businesswoman facing an unexpected challenge. Not the controlled reaction of someone who had spent years mastering her emotions. Fretted. This was different. This was personal. I looked at the screen again, hoping that somehow I had misunderstood. I'll change it. But the name Alexander Carter. Evelyn's own father, the legendary businessman who built the Carter Empire. The man who created one of the largest financial organizations in the city. The man everyone respected. Possible into laughs. To surpass, I turned towards her. Evelyn, for Stalatown. She didn't answer. In front of her, for several seconds, she looked like she wasn't in her own office anymore. I'm lost. She looked like someone that the foundation beneath her feet was never as solid as she believed. My father, she finally whispered, was quiet. Almost impossible to hear. He was behind this? Onsal, it's Onsal. Because I didn't betrayal before. I had experienced the pain of someone I trusted turning against me. This wasn't a lover. This wasn't a lover. I'm lost and deceived. was family. The person who was supposed to protect her. The person who taught her how to survive in the business world. The person whose name opened every door in the city. Evelyn slowly walked toward the window. The city lights reflected on the glass. A city she had conquered. A city where everyone knew her name. Yet, at that moment, she looked completely alone. I spent my whole life proving I was worthy of taking over his company, she said. I thought every challenge he gave me was because he wanted me to become stronger. She laughed softly. I was no happiness in it. I thought he was testing me. She turned around. But he shouldn't eliminate me. The truth was finally becoming clear. Alexander Carter wasn't simply trying to destroy me. And Shastingtan on boss. Rost. For years, Evelyn had been building her own influence. She had separated herself from her father's control. Ein some Sally. She created her own business network. She challenged his decisions. She became a threat to the empire he built. Frussen South and Hessen South. He decided to remove every person who could strengthen her position, including me, my common lot. It was becoming connected to Evelyn. And Alexander understood something before anyone else, and my home sows in her. Not because of money or dangerous, not because of power. His world couldn't control. Trust, loyalty, my Hauptmarschus. That was something people like him feared. Why me? Evelyn looked at me. Because you were the one person I chose. Without considering power, her answer surprised me. She continued. My father understands business, astound and Nairn. He understands influence, but he doesn't understand people. Sar Stang. Lost. She looked down. He thought everyone could be bought, and maybe that was why he made the same mistake everyone else made. Washidi underestimated me. He saw a man who lost his girlfriend. A struggling entrepreneur, someone with no powerful family behind him. But he never saw what Evelyn saw. A person who refused to surrender. A person who continued fighting even after losing everything. A person who could not be controlled by fear. The next day, we prepared our response. On here. This time, it wasn't just about protecting my company. It was about exposing the entire system Alexander had built. Evelyn knew something important. Her father, because of money. He was powerful because nobody had ever challenged him. People feared him too much to speak. Employers silent. Competitors surrendered. Partners followed orders. And the lost. Everyone believed Alexander untouchable, but every empire has one weakness. The person sitting on the throne eventually forgets that the people below him are the ones holding it up. Finest sound lost. The 10 executives. Old financial records. Dissolved and lost. Hidden. Every secret had buried for years. Slowly came to the surface, and as the investigation continued, I discovered something unexpected. Buy and lost. Daniel wasn't the first person Alexander used. Talented people whose careers were destroyed because they refused to follow his orders. Companies that disappeared. People who lost everything while Alexander continued growing. For years, he had created enemies without realizing it. Alexander revealed everything. Russum Ser. Alexander made his first move. He invited me to meet him, and all with little to shush simple. Come to my office if you want answers. Naunim Sal. It's a trap. I knew she was right. A man like invites someone to talk, unless he already had a plan. But there was something I needed to know. Why did he target me? By Flower. Why did he believe would solve his problems? So I went. The Samer loss. A symbol of wealth and control. When I entered his office, I finally saw the man behind the legend. For Sas odd. Alexander was older than I expected. But his presence was overwhelming. He didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need to threaten anyone. The confidence in his eyes was enough. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he smiled. So, You're the man who changed my daughter's priorities. I remained silent, walked around his desk. You know, I was curious about you. At first, I thought you were just another ambitious young man. Han, something. He stopped in front of me. You are dangerous, Lositz. Dangerous? Alexander nodded. I Honsho fret. Because people like you are impossible to predict, he continued. You don't care enough about money. And worst of all, his expression. Alexander revealed believe everything. Alexander wasn't afraid of my company. I'm lost. He wasn't afraid of my success. He was afraid of my influence because influence built through trust was stronger than influence built through fear. I wanted you gone before, left my daughter, became attached to you, he said. You destroyed my life because of that? Horrid. He looked at me calmly. I tested you. Frowned. Tested me? Alexander smiled. I wanted to know whether you were worthy. For a moment, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything he had done, all with listering relationships, destroying businesses, manipulating people's lives, he still believed he was the judge deciding who deserved success. Then he said something that changed the entire conversation. Because if you survive everything I sent against you, for some tact, into my eyes, then you are the only person who can stand beside my daughter. The room became silent. Baspinspi lost. Alexander Carter wasn't only trying to destroy me. I lost. He was testing whether I could survive becoming part of Evelyn's world. Cause. But that didn't make his actions acceptable. A person who burns down a house cannot call it a test of someone's ability to survive fire. I stepped closer, trusted my worth. Alexander's smile disappeared. My life, my future, I built those myself, and leaders and loss. For the first time, the legendary businessman looked uncertain, because he realized something. The person he tried to break had become someone who could stand directly in front of him. I'm lost. Hesitation. And then Alexander revealed the final truth. Han in the South says. The reason he targeted me, the reason Daniel betrayed me, Osset Town for it. It wasn't just about Evelyn. It wasn't just about business. It was because years ago, before I even knew Evelyn existed, my own past had already crossed paths with the Carter family, Frust, and the secret he was about to reveal. I had spent years believing my life was a simple story, a young man from an ordinary background, and finally achieved something through determination. I believed every hardship I suffered was just a consequence of the choices I made. Alexander turns off it. Hearing those words, I realized something terrifying. My story had never been as simple as I thought. Your past crossed paths with my family long before you met Evelyn. Alexander's, the boss, was calm, too calm, like a man who had been waiting years to reveal a secret. I snorted. I stared at him. What are you talking about? He walked back to his desk and opened an old file, finance document. Not a financial report. Something much older. Photographs. Something inside. Newspaper articles. From years ago. And then I saw a name. My father's name. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My father had passed away when I was young. To me, he was always a hard-working man who sacrificed everything for his family. Had wealth, he never had an influence. He never appeared in newspapers. At least, that was what I believed. But the documents in front of me told a different story. My father had once been a brilliant financial strategist and lost. A man who helped create major companies, including the Carter Empire. I looked at Alexander in disbelief and lost. Alexander shook his head. No, complicated. He worked with me. Those words felt impossible. I asked and horrid. Because the father I remembered was not someone who belonged in Alexander Carter's world. He was someone who fixed broken appliances for neighbors. Someone who came home exhausted after long days, prepped and lost a sow. Never measure yourself by what you own. Measure yourself by what you are willing to protect. Back then, I thought those from an ordinary father. Now I understood. Those words came from someone who had already seen the darkest side of power. Alexander continued. Your father was the only person who ever challenged me. I listened silently, processed. People not because of profits. He believed leaders should protect those who trusted them. A bitter smile appeared on Alexander's face. How? The room became quiet. Then he revealed the truth. Alexander and my father. Years ago, a revolutionary business strategy together. A system designed to build companies where employees, partners, and investors could all benefit. But as the Carter Empire grew, Alexander changed. Power changed him. He started prioritizing control over fairness, over people, darling and lost, over trust. My father opposed him, and that opposition became the beginning of their separation. I formed in the loft. Because he refused to become, Alexander said. I clenched my fists. So you destroyed him? That silence was an answer itself. The truth was painful. And lost house. He lost everything because he refused to betray his principles. And suddenly, I understood why my entire life had been filled with struggle, pawn and lost. Why I had to fight harder than everyone else. Because I inherited not only my father's intelligence, I inherited his enemies. Looked at me. You are more like him than you realize. I laughed coldly. Is that supposed to make me feel honored? No. He looked away. Understand why I was afraid of you. Afraid. A word I never expected to hear from someone like Alexander Carter. I sand and lots in the sand. It made sense. He wasn't afraid because I had more money. He wasn't afraid because I had more power. Lost. Integrity. Loyalty. The things he couldn't control. I left his office that day with more questions than answers. All I day mate. But one thing became clear. My entire life had been connected to this world. The betrayal from my ex, Richest. Daniel's ambition. Evelyn's struggle against her father. Everything was part of a much larger conflict. Whole and Taos. And somehow I had become the person standing between. And the new one. When I returned to Evelyn, she immediately noticed something was different. I looked at her. You knew? Lowered her eyes. That answer surprised me. Best. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in Evelyn. The woman who always seemed to have control over every situation. The woman who could negotiate billion-dollar deals without hesitation. What did you know? She was silent for a moment. Then she admitted something. My father kept records about your family for years. Why? Because he believed your father was the only person who could defeat him. The weight of those words was overwhelming. My father wasn't just some forgotten businessman and's lost to fear. And now I was carrying that same legacy. But there was one problem. I didn't want a NOS built on conflict. I didn't want to spend my life fighting my father's battles. I wanted to create my own future. I'm sorry. I looked at her. I shook my head. I'd sell it. Surprised. This isn't your fault. Something. Evelyn wasn't the reason my life became complicated. She was the first person who helped me see the truth by sound hairs. The first person who didn't run when my world became difficult. The first person who stood beside me when there was nothing to gain, and that mattered more than anything. But before we could decide our next move, another piece of information appeared. A secret account connected to Daniel was discovered. Inside it were transactions that revealed something shocking with Alexander. Daniel hadn't only worked with much bigger. Something that involved taking control of both my company and Evelyn's empire. Hounded Sao. He wasn't just a traitor. He was trying to become the next Alexander Carter. And when Daniel realized we had uncovered everything, I hauled losses. He made his final move. He released information to destroy my reputation, completely. But this time, he made the biggest mistake of his life. I'm lost and Sanling. He should have kept hidden. A secret that proved my father had prepared for this possibility years ago. A hidden message. For it. A final warning. A piece of advice left behind for the day. Someone tried to steal everything I built. And when I heard my father's voice again after all these years, I finally understood why he spent his entire life preparing me for this. Because the battle I was fighting wasn't about money. It wasn't about revenge, proving that never determined by the world around them. And now, it was time to finish what my father started, the moment I heard my hound changed. For years, I thought the past was something that had already ended. A closed chapter on losses. I left another time. But as his recorded message played in front of me, I realized my father had known Elvinson was coming. He knew someone would eventually try to take advantage of my kindness, and knew someone would mistake my patience for weakness. And most importantly, he knew I would face a moment when I had to choose what kind of person I wanted to become. The recording was simple. There were no complicated explanations, no dramatic warnings, just the voice of the man I had missed for so many years. If you are hearing this, then you have probably discovered the truth. I froze. Were not meant for the world. They were meant for me. My son, there will be people who tell you that power is everything, parn on his samer, and trust is dangerous. But remember this. The easiest thing in the world is to become like the people who hurt you. Frussen and Sinsley. I closed my eyes. For a moment, I wasn't sitting in a modern office surrounded by evidence and business plans. Fight and lost. Standing beside my father, listening to his advice. Pass edin some soused. Not understanding why those simple words mattered so much, now I understood. He wasn't teaching me how to become successful. He was teaching me how not to lose myself while becoming successful. When the recording ended, nobody spoke. Even Evelyn remained silent because she understood. This wasn't just about business anymore. This was about 2 generations of people fighting over what success truly meant. Alexander wanted control. But my father believed something different. Humanity was just another form of failure. The next morning, Daniel made his final attack. He announced that he had obtained evidence proving I had manipulated my own rise. Lawson Naos. Bess. If he couldn't defeat my company financially, he would destroy my reputation. Bess. SD. He wanted the world to believe I was no different from him. Hall, a person who used others to climb higher. But Daniel didn't understand one thing. Truth doesn't need to scream. It only needs time. The press conference began in the afternoon. In front of dozens of reporters who wore the same expression he always had. The expression of someone who believed he had already won. I built that company, he declared, calm believedist. The person you successful because of opportunities I created. Many people watched. Some believed him. Others waited. Because everyone loves a downfall story, especially when the person rising seems too successful too quickly. I walked onto the stage. No anger, no desire to attack him personally. Just the truth. I looked at the cameras. For a long time, I believed success meant proving everyone wrong. I wanted the people who doubted me to regret their decisions. But I learned something. I paused. Success is not about making your enemies feel pain. They cannot take away from you. The room became quiet. Then, I presented the evidence, the financial agreements, the financial records, and lost. Every lie Daniel created slowly collapsed, came when one person stepped forward. Someone nobody expected, a former executive from Alexander's company. He revealed everything: the manipulation, plus the threats, the way Alexander controlled businesses behind the scenes, the way Daniel was only another piece in a much larger game for Sensei. I was no longer the businessman accused of cheating his way to success. I became the person exposing a system that had harmed countless people. Toman soused of everything he claimed I was. A person who sacrificed loyalty for ambition. Hall and Dang and Sabon persessed. But this time, there was nowhere left to run. The man who once believed he could control everyone finally faced the consequences of his own choices. I met Xazar one final time. Not as an enemy. Not as someone seeking revenge. Boss who needed an answer. Was all of this worth it? I asked. Alexander, not physically. Something deeper. Haas. The confidence he carried for decades had disappeared. I thought power would protect me, he admitted. But the more power I gained, the more people I had to fear. I'm lost, and no one. For the first time, I saw him differently. Not as a monster, but as a man who had spent his entire life building walls until he forgot how to connect with anyone. Alexander lowered his eyes. Yes, that simple answer surprised me. Because powerful people rarely admit they were wrong. I spent years trying to defeat him, Alexander continued. Proust. I looked at him. How? By Kas. People loved him. He looked toward the city. And I built an empire, surrounded by people waiting for me to fall. The silence between us was heavy. The war was over. But victory didn't feel like destroying an enemy, and Lyle asked. When I returned to Evelyn, she was waiting outside. The same place where she had watched my ex ask for another chance. The same place where my old life ended. But this time, everything was different. You won, she said. Last. I looked at the city. I finally stopped fighting the wrong battles. I doubt. Because she understood. The man standing in front of her was no longer someone trying to prove his worth. Anilus, and knew it. Days later, my company entered a new phase. But this time, I changed the foundation. All the sound loss. I built it. My father believed in. A company where people mattered, where loyalty was respected, where success wasn't measured only by numbers. And Evelyn stood beside me. Not as someone who saved me. Not as someone above my equal. The woman who saw my value when I had nothing. Best lie. Would have been easier. One evening, we returned to the same rooftop restaurant where we had our first date. The city lights were still the same, but Evelyn looked at me. Do you ever think about that birthday night? Demigranely. How host in the south. I looked at the city below. The night that broke me. The night that forced me to change. The night that unknowingly led me here. No. Because if that night never happened, I looked at her route, I would have met you. For the first time, I realized something. Draining the town, Todd, and Prast. The greatest don't always begin with happiness. Sometimes they begin with loss. Sometimes they begin when everything falls apart. What truly belongs to us. My ex chose a richer man because she believed money created a better future. Daniel betrayed me because he believed success was something to steal. Oh, my passion. Because he believed power was the only protection. But I learned something they never understood. The strongest person is not the one who owns the most, and Hounan some sows. Sersen. And still choose to stand again. And this time, I wasn't standing alone.